Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Go ahead, close them, and I want you to think about that voice. You know the one I'm talking about? That voice that whispers to you in the middle of the night when you can't sleep. That voice that tells you you're not good enough. That voice that reminds you of every failure, every mistake, every time you fell short. That voice that says, maybe you should just give up, maybe this dream is too big, maybe you're not meant for more than this. Now open your eyes, because today, right here, right now, we're going to change that voice. We are going to transform it. We're going to take that same mind that has been your biggest critic and turn it into your greatest champion. And I'm going to tell you something that might sound simple, but it will change everything if you truly understand it. Your thoughts are not just random electrical impulses firing in your brain. Your thoughts are the architects of your destiny. Your thoughts are the blueprints of your future. Your thoughts, quite literally, create your life. You see, I come from a place where dreaming wasn't always encouraged. I come from a world where staying small felt safe, where blending in was easier than standing out, where the path was already laid out and all you had to do was follow it. But something inside me refused to accept that. Something inside me kept whispering, even when the world was shouting, that there was more, that I was meant for more, that my thoughts, my dreams, my vision of who I could become mattered more than what anyone else thought I should be. And let me tell you something about thoughts. They are the most powerful force in the universe when it comes to shaping your individual reality. Every single thing you see around you, every building, every invention, every piece of art, every innovation started as a thought in someone's mind. The chair you're sitting on right now, someone thought of that. The phone in your pocket, someone imagined it before it existed. The very room we're in, it was once just an idea. Everything is created twice. First in the mind, then in reality. But here's what most people don't understand. Your life works the same way. The life you're living right now is a direct manifestation of the thoughts. You've been thinking for the past months, years, maybe decades. If you want to know what you've been thinking about, look at your life. Your relationships, your bank account, your career, your health, your happiness. It's all a reflection. It's all a mirror showing you what's been going on inside your head. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, but you don't understand my circumstances. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the obstacles I'm facing. You don't know how hard it is. And you're right. I don't know your specific story, but I know struggle. I know what it feels like to be underestimated. I know what it feels like to walk into rooms where you're not supposed to be. I know what it feels like to have people look at you and make assumptions about what you can and cannot do based on where you come from, what you look like, or what your background is. Let me take you back to a moment in my life. I was 17 years old and I had just won a beauty pageant. Now I know what that sounds like. It sounds glamorous, right? It sounds like a fairy tale. But let me tell you what was really happening in my mind. I was terrified. I was standing there with a crown on my head, and all I could think about was how I didn't deserve it. How it must have been a mistake. How they were going to figure out any minute now that I wasn't special, that I wasn't talented, that I was just a girl from India who got lucky. That voice in my head was so loud. It was deafening. And it told me things that if I had listened to them, would have destroyed every opportunity that was coming my way. It told me I wasn't smart enough. It told me I wasn't talented enough. It told me that girls like me didn't become international stars. It told me to play it safe, to take the easier path, to settle for less than what my heart was screaming for. But somewhere deep inside, there was another voice, a quieter voice, a voice that said, what if you could? A voice that said, what if you're capable of more than you can even imagine right now? A voice that said, what if the only thing standing between you and your dreams is a decision to change what you believe about yourself? And that's when my journey really began. Not when I won the crown, not when I got my first acting role, not when I moved to Mumbai, or when I landed in Hollywood. My journey began the moment I decided to change my thoughts. The moment I decided that I would no longer be a prisoner to the limitations other people tried to put on me, or worse, the limitations I was putting on myself. You see, the scientific principle that explains this, it's called neuroplasticity. your brain is not fixed. It's not set in stone. The neural pathways in your brain, the patterns of thinking that feels so automatic, so natural, so much like just who you are, can be changed. They can be rewired, they can be transformed. Every time you think a new thought, every time you challenge an old belief, every time you choose to see possibility, instead of limitation, you are literally creating new pathways in your brain. Think about that for a moment. You are not stuck. You are not destined to think the same thoughts you've always thought. You are not condemned to live the same patterns you've always lived. You have the power right now, in this very moment, to think a different thought. And that different thought can lead to a different action. And that different action can lead to a different result. And those different results, compounded over time, create a completely different life. But here's where it gets challenging. Because changing your thoughts isn't UST about positive thinking. It's not about standing in front of a mirror saying affirmations while you don't believe a word you're saying. It's not about pretending everything is perfect when your world is falling apart. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something much deeper, much more powerful, and yet much more difficult. I'm talking about becoming aware of your thoughts. I'm talking about catching yourself when that negative voice starts speaking and asking yourself, is this true? Is this helpful? Is this moving me toward who I want to become or away from it? I'm talking about the discipline of redirecting your mind every single time it tries to take you down a path that doesn't serve you. I'm talking about the daily, hourly, minute-by-minute practice of choosing thoughts that empower you instead of thoughts that diminish you. And let me be clear about something. This is not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. If it were easy, everyone would be living their dream life. If it were easy, we wouldn't see so many people settling for lives that don't excite them, relationships that don't fulfill them, careers that don't inspire them. The reason most people don't change their thoughts is because it requires constant vigilance. It requires you to become the guardian of your own mind. It requires you to stand watch at the door of your consciousness and decide what you will and will not allow in. I remember when I first started working in Livewood, I was the new girl. I didn't come from a film family. I didn't have the connection. I didn't have the experience. And there were people, lots of people, who were very happy to remind me of that. They would say things like, she's just a beauty queen. She can't act. She'll be gone in a year. And you know what? Part of me believed them. Part of me thought they were right. But then I made a decision. I decided that I would not allow other people's limited thinking to become my limited thinking. I decided that their doubt could not become my doubt. I decided that their vision of who I was could not override my vision of who I was becoming. And that decision changed everything. Because here's what happens when you start to change your thoughts. The world around you starts to change too. Not because the world is different, but because you're different. You start to see opportunities that were always there, but you couldn't see them before because your mind was focused on obstacles. You start to meet people who can help you, who believe in you, who want to support you, because you're finally vibrating at a frequency that attracts that kind of energy. You start to take actions that you never would have taken before, because your new thoughts create new courage, new confidence, new conviction. And let me tell you about fear, because fear is the biggest thought pattern that holds people back. Fear disguises itself as logic. It disguises itself as being realistic. It disguises itself as protecting you. But what fear really does is keep you small. What fear really does is rob you of your potential. What fear really does is steal the life you were meant to live and replace it with the life you settled for. I've been afraid so many times. I was afraid when I decided to pursue acting. I was afraid when I got my first role and thought I might fail in front of millions of people. I was afraid when I decided to move to America and try to make it in Hollywood. I was afraid when I walked into rooms where I was the only brown face, the only person with an accent, the only one who didn't fit the traditional mold of what they were looking for. I was afraid every single time I took a risk, made a bold choice or step outside my comfort zone. But here's what I learned about fear. Fear is not a stop sign. Fear is a compass. Fear shows you exactly where you need to go, because the things that scare you the most are usually the things that will grow you the most. The opportunities that terrify you are usually the opportunities that will transform you. The dreams that seem impossible are usually the dreams that are specifically designed for you. So I started to reframe my thoughts about fear. Instead of thinking I'm afraid, therefore I shouldn't do this, I started thinking I'm afraid. Therefore this must be important. This must matter. This must be exactly what I need to do. And that single shift in thinking changed the entire trajectory of my career and my L. Think about the thoughts you think about yourself. Do you think thoughts of worthiness or unworthiness? Do you think thoughts of capability or incapability? Do you think thoughts of possibility or impossibility? Because I promise you this, whatever you think about yourself consistently becomes your reality. If you think you're not good enough, you will unconsciously sabotage opportunities to prove yourself right. If you think you can't succeed, you will find evidence everywhere to support that belief. If you think you're destined to struggle, struggle is what you will attract. But the opposite is also true. If you think you are worthy, if you think you are capable, if you think you deserve success and happiness and love and abundance, your brain will start finding ways to make that true. Your brain will start noticing opportunities. Your brain will start solving problems. Your brain will start connecting dots that you couldn't connect before. Because your brain is always trying to prove your dominant thoughts. Right. There's a story I want to share with you. When I was trying to break into Hollywood, people told me it was impossible. They said, there's no space for you. There's no room for someone like you in American entertainment. You should be grateful for what you have in India and stop trying to be something you're not. And I could have believed that. I could have let those thoughts become my thoughts. I could have accepted their version of reality as the only real. But instead, I asked myself a different question. Instead of asking, can I do this? I started asking, how can I do this? What would I need to believe about myself to make this possible? What thoughts would I need to think? What actions would I need to take? Who would I need to become? And those questions changed everything, because questions are thoughts too. And the quality of the questions you ask yourself determines the quality of your life. You want to know the secret to achieving anything you want in life? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not privilege. It's not connections. Those things can help, but they're not the secret. The secret is learning to think like the person who already has what you want. The secret is cultivating the mindset of success before you have the evidence of success. The secret is believing in the invisible until you can make it visible. And this is where most people get stuck. They say, I'll believe it when I see it. Show me the results, then I'll change my thinking. But that's backward. You have to change your thinking first. You have to believe it before you can see it. You have to think the thoughts of the person you want to become before you become that person. You have to cultivate the mindset of abundance before you experience abundance. You have to feel worthy before the world treats you as worthy. I want to talk to you about a concept that changed my life. It's called the law of assumption. The idea is simple but profound. Whatever you assume to be true about yourself and your life will eventually become true. If you assume you're lucky, you'll notice more good luck. If you assume people like you, you'll interpret their actions more favorably. If you assume you're meant for great things, you'll spot opportunities for greatness everywhere. If you assume you're unlucky, you'll only remember the bad things that happen. If you assume people don't like you, you'll misinterpret neutral actions as negative. If you assume you're meant to struggle, you'll unconsciously create struggle in your life. Your assumptions, your habitual patterns of thought create your experience of reality. So I started assuming I was exactly where I needed to be. I started assuming that every setback was a setup for a comeback. I started assuming that every closed door was redirecting me to a better door. I started assuming that I was talented, capable, resilient, and destined for extraordinary things. And guess what happened? My life started reflecting those assumptions back to me now. I want to be very honest with you about something. Changing your thoughts doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It doesn't mean you won't experience pain. It doesn't mean everything will be easy. What it means is that you'll face those challenges with a different mindset. You'll interpret that pain differently. You'll move through difficulty with resilience instead of defeat. I've faced rejection after rejection. I've had people tell me, no more times than I can count. I've had movies that failed. I've had plans that fell apart. I've had moments where I questioned everything and wondered if I was crazy for believing in myself when the evidence was saying otherwise. But in those moments, my thoughts were my anchor. My thoughts were my strength. My thoughts reminded me that failure is not final. Rejection is not personal. And setbacks are not permanent. There's a phrase I live by. The universe doesn't say no, it says not yet, or I have something better. When you start thinking this way, every disappointment becomes bearable. Every obstacle becomes temporary. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, more capable. Let me tell you about the time I auditioned for a role that I wanted desperately. I prepared for weeks. I gave everything I had in that room. And I didn't get it. I was devastated. My first thought was, see, you're not good enough. They were right about you. But then I caught that thought. I recognized it for what it was, an old pattern trying to resurface. And I replaced it with a new thought. That role wasn't meant for me. Something better is coming. This rejection is protection. And you know what? 3 months later, I got offered a role that was 10 times better. A role that challenged me in ways I never imagined. A role that opened doors I didn't even know existed. But I never would have been available for that opportunity if I had gotten the first role. The rejection I thought was the worst thing that could happen was actually the best thing that could happen. But I only know that now because I chose to think thoughts that empowered me instead of thoughts that defeated me. This is what I want you to understand. Your thoughts are creating your future right now, not tomorrow, not next week, right now. The thoughts you're thinking as you hear these words are either building the life you want or maintaining the life you have. They're either moving you forward or keeping you stuck. They're either expanding your possibilities or reinforcing your limitations. And here's the beautiful thing, you get to choose. You have complete control over this one thing. You might not be able to control what happens to you. You might not be able to control what other people say or do. You might not be able to control the economy, the industry, the market, or the circumstances you were born into. But you can control what you think about it all. You can control the meaning you assign to events. You can control whether you see yourself as a victim or a victor. You can control whether you focus on what's wrong or what's possible. I grew up in India, in a culture where there were very specific expectations about what a woman could do, should do, was allowed to do. And I could have let those cultural thoughts become my thoughts. I could have accepted those limitations as truth. But instead, I questioned them. I challenged them. I refused to let someone else's limited thinking determine my unlimited potential. And that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to question every thought that limits you. Every thought that tells you you can't. Every thought that tells you it's too late. Every thought that tells you you're not qualified, not ready, not enough. Question those thoughts. Challenge them. Ask yourself, is this thought serving me? Is this thought moving me toward my goals or away from them? Is this thought based on truth or fear? Because here's what I've discovered. Most of our limiting thoughts aren't even ours. They're borrowed. They're inherited. They're absorbed from parents, teachers, society, media, friends, colleagues. They're not truths about who we are. They're just programs running in our subconscious mind that we never thought to question. They're like outdated software that's slowing down the entire system, and it's time to upgrade. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Let's say you have a thought, I'm not a confident person. Okay, let's examine that thought. Where did it come from? Maybe a teacher once told you that you were too quiet. Maybe a parent said you were shy. Maybe you had an embarrassing moment as a child, and you decided that meant something about who you are. But here's the truth. That thought is not a fact. It's an interpretation. It's a story. It's a pattern. And just like any pattern, it can be changed. So you start replacing that thought. Every time you catch yourself thinking, I am not confident, you pause. You recognize the thought and you replace it with a new one. I'm becoming more confident every day. Notice I didn't say I'm the most confident person in the world, because your brain won't believe that if you're not there yet. But your brain can believe that you're growing, evolving, becoming. And that thought, repeated consistently, will start to create new neural pathways. It will start to change your behavior. It will start to change your reality. You'll start noticing moments when you act confidently. You'll start reinforcing those moments. You'll start building evidence that supports your new thought. And over time, the old thought loses its power, the old pattern dissolves, and you become someone who genuinely believes they are confident. Not because you faked it, but because you consistently chose thoughts that aligned with who you wanted to become. This is the work. This is the practice. This is how you change your thoughts and change your life. It's not glamorous, it's not quick, it's not easy, but it's worth it, because the life on the other side of this transformation is beyond anything you can imagine right now. I want to talk about gratitude for a moment, because gratitude is one of the most powerful thought patterns you can cultivate. When you think thoughts of gratitude, when you focus on what you have, instead of what you lack, something magical happens in your brain. Your brain literally cannot be in a state of fear and a stat E of gratitude at the same time. They are neurologically incompatible. So when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling stressed, when those old limiting thoughts start creeping in, I shift my focus to gratitude. I think about everything I'm grateful for, the people in my life, the opportunities I've been given, the challenges I've overcome, the simple fact that I woke up this morning with breath in my lungs and possibilities ahead of me. And those thoughts of gratitude shift my entire energy. They shift my perspective. They shift my reality. But gratitude isn't just about feeling good. Gratitude is about training your brain to focus on abundance. Because what you focus on expands. If you focus on everything that's wrong, you'll find more things that are wrong. If you focus on scarcity, you'll feel more scarce. But if you focus on abundance, on blessings, on possibilities, your brain will start finding more of that. You'll start seeing opportunities you were blind to before. You'll start feeling wealthy even before your bank account reflects it. You'll start feeling successful even before the world recognizes it. And that internal shift is what creates the external results. Because success isn't about achieving some external milestone and then finally feeling worthy. Success is about feeling worthy first and then taking the actions that create the milestones. It's about thinking the thoughts of someone who's already successful and letting those thoughts guide your choices. Or habits, your daily behaviors. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and for the entire day, you only think thoughts that empower you. You only think thoughts that align with your highest vision of yourself. You only think thoughts of possibility, capability, worthiness, abundance, gratitude, and love. Can you imagine what that day would feel like? Can you imagine how differently you would show up? Can you imagine the energy you would bring to every interaction, every task, every moment? Now imagine doing that for a week, for a month, for a year. Can you see how your life would be completely different? Can you see how you would make different choices, attract different opportunities, create different results? That's the power of changing your thoughts. That's the power of becoming intentional about you allow to occupy your mind. But here's where discipline comes in. Because your mind has been thinking the same thoughts for years, maybe decades. Those thoughts are comfortable. They're familiar. They're like an old worn path that your brain automatically follows. Creating new thought patterns is like creating a new path through a jungle. At first, it's hard. You have to consciously hack through the brush. You have to intentionally choose the new path, even though the old path is right there, easy and familiar. But if you keep choosing the new path, if you keep thinking the new thoughts, eventually that new path becomes the easy path. Eventually those new thoughts become automatic. Eventually your brain defaults to empowering thoughts instead of limiting thoughts. But you have to be willing to do the work when it's hard. You have to be willing to be disciplined when every part of you wants to slip back into old patterns. I remember learning to meditate because I wanted to gain more control over my thoughts. At first it was almost impossible. My mind was like a wild horse, jumping from thought to thought, most of them negative or anxious or worried. But I kept practicing. I kept sitting with my thoughts. I kept observing them without judgment. And slowly, I started to realize something profound. I am not my thoughts. My thoughts are something I have, not something I am. That realization was life-changing. Because if I'm not my thoughts, then I don't have to believe every thought that enters my mind. I don't have to act on every thought. I don't have to let every thought determine my mood or my actions. I can observe my thoughts. I can evaluate them. I can choose which ones to give power to and which ones to let pass by light. Clouds in the sky. This is the kind of mental mastery I'm talking about. This is the kind of awareness that changes everything. When you become the observer of your thoughts instead of being controlled by your thoughts, you step into a completely different level of power. You become the artist instead of the canvas. You become the writer instead of the character. You become the creator of your life instead of being at the mercy of your circumstance. And let me tell you, the world needs you to step into that power. The world needs you to change your thoughts and change your life, Because when you do, you don't just transform yourself. You transform everyone around you. You become living proof that change is possible. You become an inspiration to others who are stuck in their own limiting thoughts. You become a beacon of hope for anyone who's ever doubted themselves or given up on their dreams. Think about the people who have inspired you in your life. What was it about them that moved you? I guarantee you, it wasn't just their achievements. It was their mindset. It was their attitude. It was the way they thought about challenges, failures, obstacles. It was the way they refused to be defeated by circumstances. It was the way they believed in something bigger than what was visible. That's what inspires people. That's what changes lives. And you have that same potential. You have the same capacity to inspire. You have the same ability to transform your thinking and, in doing so, transform your world. But you have to decide. You have to make the commitment. You have to say, starting right now, I am taking responsibility for my thoughts. I am no longer going to be a passive recipient of whatever thoughts happen to pop into my mind. I am going to be intentional. I am going to be disciplined. I am going to be the guardian of my own consciousness. Let me tell you about a turning point in my career. I had been working in Bollywood for several years and I was successful. I was doing well, but something inside me wanted more. I wanted to challenge myself on a global stage. I wanted to see what was possible if I stepped completely outside my comfort zone. So I made the decision to pursue opportunities in Hollywood. Everyone thought I was crazy. They said, why would you leave a successful career to start over in a market where you're unknown? Why would you risk everything you've built? Why not just be satisfied with what you have? And those voices were loud. But there was a louder voice inside me. A voice that said, you're capable of more. You're meant for more. Don't let fear of the unknown keep you from discovering who you can become. So I changed my thoughts. Instead of thinking, what if I fail? I started thinking, what if I succeed beyond my wildest dreams? What if this is the beginning of something extraordinary? What if I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be? Doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And those thoughts gave me courage. Those thoughts gave me strength. Those thoughts gave me the resilience to keep going when things got hard. And things did get hard. There were times when I questioned my decision. Times when I felt like an outsider. Times when I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. But in those moments, I went back to my thoughts. I reminded myself why I was doing this. I reminded myself of my vision. I reminded myself that temporary discomfort is the price you pay for extraordinary growth. And slowly, things started to shift. Opportunities started opening up. Doors that seemed locked started opening. People started taking notice. And before I knew it, I was building a career in Hollywood that I couldn't have imagined when I first made that decision. But it all started with changing my thoughts. It all started with refusing to accept limitation. It all started with believing in something before I could see it. This is what I want for you. I want you to believe in your dreams before they manifest. I want you to think thoughts of success before you have evidence of success. I want you to cultivate unshakable faith in yourself, even when the world is giving you reasons to doubt. Because that's what creates breakthroughs. That's what creates transformation. That's what creates the kind of life that makes you wake up every morning, excited about what's possible. Now, let's talk about the thoughts you think about other people, because this is important too. The way you think about other people reveals a lot about how you think about yourself. If you're constantly judging others, criticizing others, comparing yourself to others, those thoughts are poisoning your own well-being. They're creating a mindset of scarcity, competition, and lack. But when you start thinking thoughts of appreciation, adoration, and celebration for other people's success, something beautiful happens. You start to believe that success is abundant. You start to believe that someone else's win doesn't diminish your chances. You start to believe that there's enough success, enough opportunity, enough abundance for everyone. And that belief changes everything. I used to struggle with this. When I first started in the industry, I would see other actresses getting roles I wanted, and I would think negative thoughts. I would think, why them and not me? What do they have that I don't have? But those thoughts only made me feel worse. They only created more insecurity, more self-doubt, more fear. So I made a conscious decision to change those thoughts. When I saw someone else succeed, I would consciously think, good for them. Their success proves that success is possible. Their success shows me what's achievable. Their success inspires me to keep going. And those thoughts completely shifted my experience. Instead of feeling competitive and threatened, I started feeling inspired and motivated. Instead of scarcity, I started feeling abundance. Instead of jealousy, I started feeling joy. And here's what's interesting. When I changed those thoughts, I became more successful. Because the energy of abundance attracts abundance. The energy of celebration attracts celebration. The energy of believing there's enough for everyone creates space for you to receive your share. But the energy of scarcity, competition, and jealousy repels the very things you want. So pay attention to the thoughts you think about other people. Are they generous thoughts? Are they kind thoughts? Are they thoughts that assume the best? Or are they judgmental thoughts? Critical thoughts? Thoughts that tear others down to make yourself feel better? Because I promise you, the thoughts you think about others are ultimately thoughts you're thinking about yourself. And they're creating your reality. Let me share something personal with you. There was a time in my life when I dealt with a lot of criticism. People had opinions about everything: my appearance, my accent, my choices, my relationships, my career moves, everything. And at first, I let those external voices become my internal voice. I would think, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should change who I am to fit what they expect. But then I realized something crucial. Other people's opinions of me are none of my business. What they think says more about them than it says about me. And if I allow their thoughts to become my thoughts, I'm giving away my power. I'm letting them control my life. I'm letting them determine my worth. So I made a decision. I decided that I would be the only one who gets to define me. I would be the only one whose opinion of me matters. I would think thoughts about myself based on who I know I am, not based on what others assume I am. And that decision was liberating. It freed me from the exhausting task of trying to please everyone. It freed me from the impossible standard of trying to fit into everyone's expectations. It freed me to be authentically, unapologetically myself. And you know what happened? The people who were meant to be in my life loved me for exactly who I was. The opportunities that were meant for me came to me because I was being authentic. The success I experienced felt genuine because it was based on my truth, not someone else's version of who I should be. But none of that would have happened if I hadn't changed my thoughts. If I hadn't decided to think empowering thoughts about myself regardless of what anyone else thought. This is your invitation to do the same. Stop giving other people's opinions power over your life. Stop letting their limited vision of you become your limited vision of yourself. Stop thinking that their doubt means something about your capability. Their doubt is about them, not you. Their criticism is about them, not you. Their negativity is about them, not you. You get to choose what you think about yourself. And I'm telling you, choose thoughts that elevate you. Choose thoughts that empower you. Choose thoughts that remind you of your infinite potential. Choose thoughts that align with your highest vision of who you're becoming. Because those thoughts, repeated consistently, will create the reality you dream about. I want to talk about resilience, because resilience is born in your thoughts. Resilient people aren't people who never face adversity. Resilient people are people who think differently about adversity. They think thoughts like, this is temporary, I can handle this. I've overcome challenges before, and I'll overcome this one too. This is making me stronger. This is teaching me something important. Those thoughts create emotional strength. Those thoughts create mental toughness. Those thoughts create the ability to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. Because let's be honest, life is going to challenge you. Life is going to test you. Life is going to knock you down. The question is not whether you'll face difficulties. The question is, what will you think about those difficulties when they come? I've had moments where everything seemed to be falling apart. Projects that didn't work out, relationships that ended, plans that completely crumbled. Moments where I felt lost, confused, uncertain about the future. And in those moments, my thoughts were everything. If I had thought this is the end, I'm done. I can't recover from this. That would have become my reality. But instead, I thought this is a chapter, not the whole story. This is a detour, not a dead end. This is happening for me, not to me. And those thoughts carried me through. Those thoughts gave me the strength to take the next step, even when I couldn't see the whole staircase. Those thoughts reminded me that I was capable of more than I knew, stronger than I felt, and destined for better than I could imagine in that moment. This is the power of resilient thinking. This is the power of choosing thoughts that serve you even when your circumstances are challenging. This is the power of understanding that Your thoughts are the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Let me tell you something about success that nobody talks about. Success is not a destination. Success is a mindset. You don't become successful and then start thinking successful thoughts. You start thinking successful thoughts and then you become successful. The thoughts come first. Always. Successful people think about time differently. They think about failure differently. They think about obstacles differently. They think about themselves differently. They think about what's possible differently. And those different thoughts create different actions. And those different actions create different results. So if you want to be successful, start thinking like a successful person thinks. Start thinking thoughts of abundance. Start thinking thoughts of possibility. Start thinking thoughts of gratitude for what you already have, while being excited about what's coming. Start thinking thoughts that assume things will work out in your favor. Start thinking thoughts that see opportunities in every situation. I remember reading about successful people and noticing a pattern. They all had this unshakable belief that they were meant for great things. Not because they were arrogant, not because they were delusional, but because they had trained their minds to focus on possibility instead of limitation. They had cultivated thoughts of worthiness. They had developed an identity as someone who creates value, solves problems, makes an impact. And I realized that I could cultivate those same thoughts. I could develop that same mindset. I could train my brain to think like the most successful version of myself. And so I started paying attention to how I thought about money, how I thought about opportunities. I thought about my own capabilities. And wherever I found limiting thoughts, I replaced them with empowering thoughts if I caught myself thinking I can't afford that. I would replace it with how can I afford that? What would I need to do to make this possible? If I caught myself thinking I'm not qualified for that opportunity, I would replace it with I may not be qualified yet, but I'm capable of becoming qualified. What do I need to learn? Who do?